Welcome everyone. We are at the ODZ Chat and Chill. And my Discord is actually not working. To the group, we're steady, 2 watts per kilogram right today. So I'm having Discord issues today. I see we have a couple of people on Discord. It's a bummer. I can probably hear you speaking. If you want to test and say something, I'll see if I can hear you. So we are on ODZ Chat and Chill, steady 2 watts per kilogram ride. And we'll talk about different topics today. We'll typically cover nutrition, training, etc. Hey Chad, I think I heard you. That's good. A topic that was suggested last week, which is a very interesting one that we'll cover today, is about heart rate and using heart rate in your training. Hey John, thanks for joining on Facebook. If you have any comments or questions, please type them in. Just getting the group up to speed here. Hey BJ, thanks for joining. Hey Brett, morning. So we'll talk about heart rate, and I will start by asking the group here, how many of you use a heart rate monitor? We have a big group, about 47, 50. So So I asked the group who uses a heart rate monitor. So a lot of people use heart rate for training when they don't have a power meter. And people who have power meters typically also use the heart rate as a training tool. So we'll go through that. Heart rate is something widely used, but it's very commonly misunderstood. So the definition of heart rate is average beats per minute. So if you have a heart rate monitor, a strap that you use that connects to your bike computer, you see your heart rate like mine on the screen. What you're seeing there is really an average of beats per minute. There's something called a heart rate variability, which are the actual changes between each beat of your heart. So it measures the variation or the changes in time between successive heartbeats. And I'll talk about using heart rate versus using heart rate variability and what's more useful for training purposes. Hey Jim, thanks. You said the music is loud. I'll turn that down. Thank you so much for the feedback. That should be that, I hope. All right. So let's talk about heart rate. And then we'll get into lactate threshold heart rate and the heart rate variability that I just mentioned. There's a lot of talk about high or low heart rate. But really, what is high? What's the definition of high? That's very different for different people. It's very individualized. It's actually similar to the size of your feet, right? Each person has a different size. It's part of who you are, and it doesn't reflect fitness. Meaning, if you have a high maximum heart rate, I don't know, call it 200 or whatever, and others have a 170 maximum heart rate, it doesn't mean that one athlete is more fit than the other. So that alone is really not an indicator. Not related to athletic performance. Now, how do you know what your maximum heart rate is? And I'll ask the group here if they have that information about themselves. Let's see what we hear. So, it's too bad that my Discord is not working because typically we have a lot of riders contributing to the conversation. There is a formula out there that you probably heard about or read about. Which says 220 beats minus your age. And in fact, we have one rider here who wrote that. So I asked the group if they know what their maximum heart rate is, and they're giving me the formula. Unfortunately, the formula is not accurate. For most people, the way to find out, or for most people, that formula will be way off. So in my example, that formula is about 25 beats per minute off. My maximum heart rate is 201, and I can guarantee you I'm not 19 years old. So how do you find out where your maximum heart rate is? One way to find out, well, and let's just say that it's sometimes hard to get to that maximum, but talking about lactate threshold heart rate. If you do a 30-minute time trial test, so this is Joe Friel's suggestion to find out what your lactate threshold heart rate is. You go out and you do a 30-minute time trial. So you race as if you're in a race. You go as hard as you can, but you know you have to go hard for 30 minutes, so you pace yourself somewhat. And what you do is you look at the last 20 minutes of that time trial that you're doing, and you look at your average heart rate for those 20 minutes. That number should be very, very close to your lactate threshold heart rate. So what is lactate threshold heart rate? It is the heart rate at which you can sustain power without going anaerobic. So it's below VO2, it's something you can sustain. It's hard. Ian joined, thanks for joining. He probably can't hear me unless he's on Facebook as well. So the other way to know your lactate threshold heart rate is through a blood test. When you do a ride and then you test the lactate in your blood every couple minutes or so. So again, the lactate threshold heart rate will be something lower than your maximum heart rate, but it indicates how much or for how long you can sustain power for. And that's where the time trial comes in handy. Now, that's all great. We're talking about heart rate and threshold heart rate. Why does it all matter? So a lot of people like to train based on heart rate alone. The disadvantage of using only heart rate and not power is that heart rate will give you information about how hard you're working. So if it was a car, how hard the engine is working. That's all. And so there are many things that could change the heart rate in a ride. You could be at a high heart rate for your typical heart rate. So when you compare it to your typical heart rate, because it's too hot, or because you're tired, or because you're excited, you're getting ready for a ride or a race, that's an important one. But most importantly, if you are trying to do intervals based on heart rate alone, that's going to be misleading, because you might be hitting the power that you're supposed to hit at an interval, but you're not at that heart rate yet. There's a little bit of a delay for the heart to catch up, if you will. As opposed to training with power, when you're looking at your numbers, that's an immediate feedback. So you know if you're hitting your numbers or not. And when the interval actually started. And also over time, measuring progress through power is easier than based on heart rate alone. Now, one thing that lactate threshold heart rate is useful, and that's the 30-minute time trial test I mentioned, is you look at your lactate threshold heart rate and divide that by your maximum heart rate, and you get a percentage. So if that percentage is around 50%, the athlete is not as fit. The closer that percentage is to the maximum heart rate, the more fit the athlete. So for example, ultra marathoners have a lactate threshold heart rate that is 95% of their maximum heart rate. Now, what does that mean? It means that athlete can clear lactic acid fast so that it can sustain very high power for a long time. Thanks, Ian. You made a comment here on Facebook. Okay, so how about changes in heart rate over time? So some people might notice a change in their heart rate per minute, beats per minute, when they compare themselves today to, let's say, years ago. So typically endurance training might provide some changes in the maximum heart rate, but that change is typically around 10 beats per minute. So again, a better sign of fitness is your lactate threshold heart rate compared to your max. Oh, and just one other point. People who have what's considered above average or high max heart rate could simply be at an older age, right? So let's say in their 40s, 50s. I'm the perfect example. My max heart rate is 201. And I've always wondered why it was so much higher than my colleagues that I ride with. So I did a lot of reading on the subject. And there's an explanation that actually made sense to me. And that is that that athlete probably developed that high heart rate in their young years, because when the heart is young, it's more compliant to changes. It adapts more easily to changes. And if that person continues to be active throughout his or her life, they'll carry on the higher heart rate to later in life. Okay, so that's a lot of background on what heart rate is, what lactate threshold heart is, and why using power is more useful than using heart rate for training on the bike and doing the structured training, intervals, etc. So I'll ask the group here. I've asked people if they know what their max heart rate is. Some people do, some people don't. I've asked if they use power meter, heart rate monitors. Some do. And now I'm going to ask if they use heart rate to train. Okay, so I'm hearing, or I'm reading actually, people say that they use power. And that makes sense, especially because that's available on Zwift here. Hey Chad, so Chad uses heart rate for information and power to train. Amber uses power. Awesome. Okay, so if you train with power and you use heart rate for information, you probably know what your average heart rate is compared to the power that you're producing. So let's say if you're doing a zone 2 ride at 65% of FTP, you might know what your heart rate typically is. So on a day that you're out doing that same 65% ride, and your heart rate is higher than usual, that might tell you something, right? What exactly is that telling you? It's only telling you you're working harder. Again, it could be as a result of being in the heat, stress from other riders, from the ride itself, excitement because of a race. So if you train with power and you keep track of your heart rate, you might be interested in what's called heart rate variability. If you're catching us live now on Facebook, this is an ODZ Chat and Chill ride. Steady pace. So give me your feedback. Do you know what heart rate variability is?
Right on!
Okay, so changes from day to day. So it's more precise than that, Chad. Well, I guess you would compare day to day. The actual definition is the variability between your heartbeats. So let's say if at rest you have 60 beats per minute as an average heart rate, between those beats, there's variability because your heart is really beating at every second. So if you were to measure that, you might see that between one heartbeat and the other, we have 0.8 seconds, or you have 1.2 seconds in the next. So those are the differences. So you can see how detailed and granular this gets, right? Now, heart rate variability tells you way more and is much more useful than simply your average heart rate, which is what you get from a heart rate monitor that you see on the screen here. So if your heart rate variability is low, that indicates, or before I go there, let me just say that if you start tracking heart rate variability, and the way to do it, there's apps for that. You start to generate a pattern for yourself. So you start to read the data and learn what's your usual variability. And then you start comparing that day to day. So that goes back to the differences day by day. And then you look at the data, and if the variability is low, that means your body is tired. That means it could mean that you're sick. It could mean that you're getting sick. It could mean that you're overtraining. So that's a good indicator. So then the opposite is also true. If you have high heart rate variability, it indicates that your body's fresh, you're well rested, you're ready to train, you're recovered. So really, heart rate variability is an umbrella definition for different types of calculations and analysis methods to measure the activity of your nervous system. So I have never tracked my heart rate variability, and now I'm really curious about it the more I read about it, because I think it can provide some really good feedback about your training. So I'll take a pause here, check on the group. So Tyler's asking a question. Variability while at fixed effort. Okay. So the heart rate variability is a tool for you to use when you're at rest. I mean, you could use when you're also exercising, but that's going to be more useful when you're at rest and you compare day to day. So it gives you feedback about your nervous system and whether it's a good day to train or not for you. So you find your normal and then use it to track it. If you have training peaks, you can sync that information into your training peaks. That way you can see your power, your chronic training load, your training stress score, and your heart rate variability. So what could happen is you look at, if you use a tool like Training Peaks or Training Peaks, you look at your chronic training load and your form, and it shows that you're fresh, that you have enough rest, that you can go and have a hard day of training. What that doesn't take into account is everything else that might be going on in your life, or other sources of stress, or even fatigue that's not reflected in the numbers. But your heart rate variability will show that. So this is where it can be useful. So why is that useful? You want to train when you're fresh. Have a hard ride. Have an intensity session when you're fresh, because that's when you're going to reap the benefits of your efforts. So there are apps out there that you can use. And if you are somebody who likes data, it's perfect for you. If you have any questions on heart rate, how to use heart rate variability, determining lactate threshold heart rate, send me a message and I'll respond to you as soon as I can. So Z is asking the group, what is your BPM now? Let's see if anyone responds. $160, 134, 118, 150, 115. Okay, a lot of people in 114, 115 range here. Of course, I'm at 142. Again, because my max heart rate is so high. And because I'm excited to be here talking. So I'm just now sending some messages here to the group. Not everyone is on Facebook or Discord. So at least they can have an idea of what we've been talking about. So as usual, hey Karen, thanks. Right on. So as usual, after the ride, I'm going to post articles about the topics we're covering today. So heart rate variability, lactate threshold heart rate. Hey, Karen, I know work gets in the way. But you always seem to find time to Zwift, so it's all good. So for those of us in the US today, depending on where you are, you'll be able to see the solar eclipse. I happen to be in the Midwest, so I got my glasses, everything ready to go. Should be fun. Where I'm at, I should get about 2 minutes of darkness around noon today. Tyler is saying that he used to average 178 heart rate during a mountain bike race, and now he's above 175. Yeah, my average heart rate for races is 187. Karen is going to have a partial eclipse today. I guess where she is in the US.
Right on.
So another question I'm going to ask the group here. Now changing the subjects completely. Nothing to do with heart rate. I think we covered that enough. Again, I'll post a link with the articles about more information if you want to read further. So here's the question of the day. What is best? 2 short rides or 1 long ride? So let's say on the weekend, you could do either, for sake of example here, 1 6-hour ride or 2 3-hour rides, 1 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. Which one is better? How do you decide? I'm going to ask the group here. So I'm asking the group, what's better? 1 long ride or 2 short ones? Kurt, hey Kurt. And Chad are saying depends on the effort, depends on goals, event type and duration. Agree. But how would you structure your training? Let's say that you do have a Gran Fondo. No preference, enjoy both. Somebody saying that their bottom prefers 2 rides instead of 1 long one. But hey, you can get used to it. Due to what you want to train for. Is he saying okay? So a lot of people saying, yeah, my behind would prefer 2 rides instead of 1. Let me comment on that. All right, so yes, depends on your training. But let's say that you're the kind of athlete who does a little bit of everything, right? And you train year-round. And I'm not saying you have to be riding a lot every single day or every single week. So you have a good base endurance. From that standpoint, if you have a weekend to train, what's best? 2 short rides or 1 long one? So here's some food for thought. So again, if you're used to riding, you probably have the endurance to go long. If you were to spend 6 hours on the bike for an event, chances are you'll be able to do it. So from that standpoint, 2 short rides is better because you'd be able to go harder during those smaller rides or shorter rides, excuse me. It's natural when you're riding long that you get tired and so you slow down. So on those 2 short rides, you can go harder, get better stimulus for your muscles, you can recover faster, so you get more benefit for the effort. So that's the short answer. Go with 2 short rides. So in my example, 2 short rides of 3 hours each versus 6. Go with the 2 of 3 hours each. Now, of course, if you have a big event coming up, like I have one on Saturday, 175 miles, you need to have spent at least 2 or 3 weekends before then, of course with appropriate recovery built in, with long rides, about 6 hours. That's what I've been doing to prepare for that event. But the intensity work is going to help you there. And also, so that's why the 3-hour rides are more helpful. The other side of that is a 6-hour ride is going to be helpful for you to do a dress rehearsal. So this is where you can fine-tune your nutrition, even your equipment. Like somebody was saying, feeling the saddle and being in pain, or perhaps the bike fit, right? Because there are some nagging pains that might show up after a 4-hour ride, not in a shorter ride. So this is where having the long one is helpful. And Tyler's asking, what about preparing for 6+ hour races? Again, that might be a little different. But 6 hours is a long time. You're not going to be working super hard during the 6 hours. So I go back to the argument that you have the endurance to be in the saddle for that long. And then you do the intensity. There are compact workouts that you can do, and I've done them in 3 hours, for example, that are super hard. Harder than you would ever go in a 6-hour race. And that's a perfect workout to prepare for that long race. But yes, you would have to be in the saddle for a long time to be ready for it. But in terms of getting ready in terms of muscular endurance and strength, intensity is your friend. Now, Tyler, are you doing any 6-hour races? That sounds hard. We had our Diva's latest race last Saturday. As usual, great race, great turnout. In fact, many of the ladies here on this ride were in the race. Remember chamois cream? Yes, it really works. Somebody's asking if this course is Greater London flag. Yes, yes. We seem to be in London every Monday. Although there's a new month coming up, so that might change. If you're just tuning in on Facebook, this is Odiva's Chat and Chill Ride. Every Monday at 7 a.m. Eastern. One o'clock in the UK, 2 o'clock Central European Time. So we already covered heart rate and how to use it in training, among other things. Now we're just rolling along, having fun for the rest of the ride. So I'm just letting the ladies here know that tomorrow I'm going to be leading a Zwift Academy workout. Hey Beth, morning. Actually, tomorrow is not going to be a workout. I think it's going to be a steady state ride, which tends to be really popular. Oh, we have some sprinters. Go, go, go. Hey, June, good morning. It's all good. So if you send me what topics you want to cover next week, I'll look into it and bring it to the next ride. I'm just asking the group if anyone has any events coming up. I guess not quite crowd today. Yeah, it's a big vacation month. Tyler has a gravel race in a month or so. How long is the gravel race? I love gravel races. Gravel race is really about power. In a road ride or race, you can sort of hide. You can hide in the draft, etc. Harder to do in gravel. There's of course more rolling resistance, so it comes down to power. It's actually great training too. Typically here in the US we start gravel season in September, October, so it's coming up. 60 miles. Yeah. I love the off-road stuff too. So you're right, Tyler, it requires bike handling. It can be more technical. My husband is a big fan of gravel races. He raced Dirty Kansas for the second year in a row. I usually do the 16-mile ones. I enjoy those as well. So the group broke apart a little bit, as it typically happens in a big group. But I think for the most part, we stayed together. We have just about 5 minutes to end the ride here. Thank you so much for joining. So Tyler, Dirty Kansas is in Kansas. It's a 200-mile gravel race. Really hard. So it's Emporia, Kansas, to be more precise.
Right on! Right on!
So thanks everybody for joining. So title, look into that. Yeah, it's hilly. It's got a little bit of everything, as you can imagine. It's also in the middle of nowhere. But it's definitely not a mountain gravel race. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for watching Facebook. If you are a female rider looking for a great group ride tomorrow, we have Zwift Academy ride. Otherwise, I'll see you back here next week. Stuart wants to see 300 watts. How about I'll live stream my next VO2 workout? That way you can see it. I won't be doing much talking. That's the kind of live stream that only shows the numbers and the pain and suffering. Nothing like a chat and chill like today. So you can check my page, volume.fit. It says at the bottom of the screen there. And I typically stream my workouts to that page. Yeah, this is definitely a easy-paced recovery ride. Also a great ride for beginners. Because when I started, my FTP was 2 watts per kilogram. We all start somewhere. Just makes it more fun to be in a group. Thank you. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks, everyone. I will see you back next Monday.